We're on to sharing control. This is the S in our Wiser Parenting framework. And we want to talk about what sharing control really means, why we want to share control, and how we can do this. So in our I, we talked about identifying boundaries, and we talked a lot about your personal boundaries and your home's boundaries, and that you get to decide what those look like, and you get to decide how you will be treated and how you feel and what you love and what you don't, and what you want the home to be like and what you're okay happening there as well. Now, just like your home has boundaries and a state has boundaries and a country has boundaries, your child has boundaries too. So imagine an invisible circle around them, kind of like this bubble. And within that boundary, they are in control of their things. So if you remember from last time, we talked about what is in your control. Your attitudes, your feelings, your choices, your opinions, your actions, your body, your effort, your words. Those are all things that are in your control, that should be in your control. Now, everything that is in that circle of in your control, those are the things that are out of your control when it comes to your kids. So your kids' choices, that's in their control. That's in their boundary. Their feelings, the emotions that they have. You can't really control whether your child is happy or sad. You can't really control if they feel neglected by a friend or if they feel left out. You really don't have any control over their emotions. You can't reach into their emotion center and start to control that. And with choices, you can't reach into their brain and touch the wires just right to make them choose certain things. You also don't have any control over their attitudes or opinions. If they like the same things you do or if you don't, that's totally out of your control. You don't have any control over what effort they put into things, what they choose to do with their body. So we'll hear parents say that they want to force their child to go to sleep at night. We really don't have any control over forcing our kids to sleep or forcing them to eat. We don't have control over their words or their actions. This was so hard for me to come to the realization to and start to really accept, because I felt like I had control over my kids and that I should have control over my kids. And the reality is that we don't, we shouldn't, and that's okay and that's healthy. We are going to teach you how to set up things so that your kids aren't just raging out of control. We don't want that either. But what we really want for them is to exercise self-control, to be in control of themselves by learning what their control leads to. So that's something that we really just want to drive home. You are only in control of what's in your boundaries. Your attitudes, your feelings, your actions, etc. You are not in control of anybody else's. That is all theirs. And what it really comes down to is ownership. And so we want to help you visualize that boundary around your kids and see, are you reaching in and trying to take ownership of their choices? You're trying to force them to do the honors class. You're trying to force them to be kind. You're trying to force them to do all of these different things. Now, once again, like I said, we are going to teach you how to help them be socially appropriate and be respectful and be responsible. We aren't saying that we don't want to do that, but we do want to help you realize that when you're crossing into a child's boundary, that's going to create relationship ruptures, and it is a violation of that boundary that's theirs. And just like we want ours to be honored, we want them to feel honored as well. Now, we also see parents reach into their child's boundaries and try to take ownership of the consequences that their kids experience. And we'll talk about that more in the E and in the R. And we also see parents try to take ownership of the child's emotions, try to tell them what they should feel. You shouldn't be sad about that, just be grateful, those kinds of things. And if you remember in our W, where we talked about warmth, our job is to offer validation for emotions and the experience that they're having, but not to try to take ownership of them. So we really want to emphasize this word owner. So when you're experiencing interactions with your kids or even with other people, the question kind of comes down to, who's the owner of that? Is that in my boundary or is that in somebody else's boundary? I'm in a work situation where there was an individual, a coworker that I was working with, and I had done everything within my power to set her up for success. And she chose to not follow through. And that led to things being uncomfortable. In that situation, who was really the owner of that? That was my coworker. And so I needed to be able to look at myself and be proud of what I did and realize, my coworker's choices were her choices. Now the same thing happens with our kids, but it's hard because the lines get blurred a little bit. We're responsible for taking care of them from the time that they're a baby. And so we're all in their boundaries for a good long time. But we need to step back, have the lines be a little bit clearer, and allow our kids to own their choices, to own their emotions, to own the outcomes of their actions, and not keep on crossing in. And we're going to talk about why in a little bit. But what can you actually control? Once again, the answer to that is just you and your actions and your warmth, your boundaries, allowing kids to experience consequences and not rescuing them from those consequences.